Hello, everyone. Welcome to our 529 Enable Solutions webinar series. We're pleased to have you join us today for our July webinar, the 529 Employer Channel. My name is Mary Creeksfeld. I'm on the marketing team with ISS Marketing Intelligence, and we'll be moderating today's webinar. We have Paul Curley, Director of Savings Research from the ISS Marketing Intelligence and 529 Enable Solutions team. And Paul will discuss the 529 Employer Channel from a usage, employer benefits, and state tax incentive perspective. Just a couple housekeeping items before we start the presentation. If you have any questions during the session, we invite you to submit them through the Q&A section in the engagement panel on the right side of the webinar screen, shown here on this slide. And we'll do our best to address questions as they come up during the session, and we'll answer any remaining ones at the end of the presentation. And if for any reason we do not get your question today during the presentation, we will follow up with you directly. Also, if you do have any questions viewing or accessing the webinar, we do recommend you try refreshing your browser. That usually solves any issues. But if you do, please, if you continue to have problems, please feel free to chat us, and we will do our best to help you. But thank you, and I'll now turn the presentation over to Paul.
Thank you, Mary. Much appreciated. Also, thank you, Mary, for all your help on the webinar series to date and month over month, and it's much appreciated. Today's agenda is that we're going to start out with industry announcements. As we do every single month, we talk about industry announcements on both the 529 side, but also the ABLE side. In each and every month, we also talk about data and research updates, throughout the industry, but also based on our own market data and proprietary surveys. And also, but for this month, we're going to be focusing on the employer channel, and we're going to take a deep dive into that. And of course, at the end, we'll be doing question and answer. We'll do our best to answer the questions throughout, but we may need to hold onto some of those questions at the end. So with that, we'll jump in. And for as a quick recap, but also to provide that deep dive, the goals of the webinar series is to share and learn, talk about best practices, provide that product training that is definitely needed throughout the industry, but also to help and support the 529 ABLE community. And especially with everything going on today, typically every single year we host a community-wide event within our 529 conference in person. But it's great to be able to pivot over to the digital format and virtual format, given the realities of today, but also to build that awareness and understanding and prioritization of 529s and ABLE accounts. And so thank you for your support and collaboration. And first, I'd like to share some great news with Paul Curley. We're going to be going through the webinar series throughout 2020. We started out this year's webinar series talking about primer, talking about legislative updates, top trends. We dove into product last month and upwards and onwards to the employer channel this month, on to direct, then into advisor. And of course, in November, around that Thanksgiving time, we're going to be talking about family dynamics and gifting. And also in December, we're going to have a year-end planning recap. But as a quick side note, within the photo, I did play basketball with John Krasinski. He's there in that first, arrow on the left. So he had some good news to share. And so, building upon, that experience of playing basketball with John, going to high school, elementary school with him, we're here to share some great news, with Paul Curley. As a quick, side note, yes, I do have a tie on today, suit on today. I used to have a shirt and tie on game days right there as well. So people ask me all the time why I'm all dressed up. Well, I guess I've been doing it for many years now. That was 97, so upwards and onwards. And of course, as we do want to provide that the industry announcement that we are moving forward with the 529 conference 2020. It will be a virtual conference. That we do have the website 529conference.com. The dates will be the week of September 21st to 25th. We're going to break out the sessions that Monday and Tuesdays, the 529 Essential Seminar, which provides product training. On the conference days of Wednesday, Thursday, we're going to have the conference on those days. And Friday is the summit. And each and every day, we'll be having sessions pretty much from 12:45 p.m. to 5 p.m. East Coast time. That way it's in the morning for, those that are on the West Coast, but also the afternoon for those on the East Coast. Thank you, Drew. Got your post. Thank you for your guidance. So there we go. So moving over to industry announcements. So for, in terms of the first bullet point, there's been a number of plans launching fee-based advisor, plans and share classes, recently. And of course, that does build up to the, pivot around for Reg BI. But there were 3 plans that launched brand new fee-based share classes, which is obviously something to keep track, and we'll be tracking going forward. Also on July 20th, Morgan Stanley launched their Morgan Stanley National Advisory 529 plan to a select number of advisors. They're going to be taking that experience of that select number of advisors, within that current plan, make enhancements as needed, and then roll it out perhaps in the late fall, to their 15,000 plus, Morgan Stanley advisors. So we'll be tracking that, and congrats to Morgan Stanley who announced that the week of 529 day in 2020. Also, yesterday and today, MSRB, Municipal Securities Rulemaking Board, held a directors meeting. They included, per public press release, that they are doing a retrospective review of the rules, which means that they're taking a look at the prior rules. Do they want to keep it? Do they want to change it? Should they amend something? So that's part of what they're working on as it relates to 529 and ABLE. And another important industry announcement is that Jamie Knupp is transitioning to the Virginia Economic Development Partnership. He's been in the 529 and now ABLE industry for 20 years roughly. I believe he's been a great partner, great friend to the industry. The photo on the bottom right includes a photo of him presenting on 529 and ABLE. He's sitting there working at the table, presenting at the 529 conference with Andrea Fierstein of AKF Consulting, which is great news. He's been a longtime partner and pillar for the industry. He's been presenting pretty much he's been presenting every year on both tax benefits and planning, pretty much every year since we've been running the 529 conference for the last 6 or 7 years. So, just want to say congratulations, Jamie, upwards and onwards, and the light's always on for you. And also, last but not least, Morningstar methodology has been updated. They included several, bullet points, tweaks, changes, trends. It's really the methodology that they changed, and then they're going to be basically reviewing that methodology, when they do release their 2020 529 plan ratings currently set for October 2020. But there were a number of tweaks and changes to the methodology, one of which is that investors they strip out the analysis of state tax benefits when they analyze plan selection as one of the many bullet points that's worth noting. So if you have an update, email me, and happy to see if it fits for the monthly webinar. Pivoting over to our ABLE column, the National Association of State Treasurers now sent a letter to Congressional Military Family Caucus, and that really related to, amongst other things, and the audience really did pivot and focus around the ABLE Age Adjustment Act, which is an important component. Typically, the age of onset for the disability needs to be 26, under the age of 26 years old, and broadly speaking, there's within the ABLE Age Adjustment Act, there's been momentum to move that to the age of 46. A number of NASS members signed the letter, and including myself, I signed the letter as well. So it's great, great support. Congratulations, NASS, and also congratulations, NASS, on your Treasury Management Symposium, which is soon wrapping up. The second bullet point, Nebraska has released an RFI, request for information for program management services. Due date's August 28th. Take a look if interested in learning more, and potentially providing information and potentially helping to run the Nebraska ABLE Savings Program. So learn more. Last but not least, Nathan Luce of Washington State ABLE Governing Board has passed away. He was a great leader within the advocacy space, and he will be greatly missed. So a lot of news this month on both 529 and ABLE. Please feel free to email me on a future month. And for this month's webinar, we will take a moment now for a quick attendee poll. Please find the poll question in the engagement panel on the right side of the screen. We will give everyone about 30 seconds to answer the results, and the results will display live. Just give it a couple more seconds. Thank you, and you should be able to see the poll results on the right side of your screen. And I'll see if I can see it as well. So 14% responded 30-minute sessions, 27 responded 45 minutes, and 9 responded 60. So that's very helpful, from our perspective as we try to plan and provide content that is exactly what you're looking for. There's a lot of discussion nowadays in terms of there being perhaps too many webinars, too few webinars, like just getting that exact length down. So we want to make sure that we continue to present the content that's exactly right for you. Right now, it does seem that at 45 minutes is about right. There's some discussion about, well, if we do 50, there's continuing education credits that can be provided, but we'll continue to enhance over time. So thank you. Thank you for your insight. And on the data side, there's some commentary and current storyboard. We're currently in the production process of the second quarter 2020 market data. What's interesting is that the assets in the second quarter have reached all-time highs, and that does align primarily, or at least first, based on the market performance. By and large, the S&P 500, for example, was up 20% in the second quarter. So assets, did have a large gain. Within the 529 space, of course, that a lot of the investments are target date and risk asset allocation. So it's not really, the 529 market invests in a number of products, but by and large, the assets did have a noticeable increase in size due to the market performance. What also happened was that the number of accounts continued to grow, and primarily that the accounts continue to grow, and I'll touch upon new account growth momentarily. But what we also noticed that gross sales and distributions also decreased. So there was the decrease in gross sales money come in, and much deeper increase in gross distributions money coming out of the 529 plans. So there was a net effect of a positive net flow for the second quarter, and even higher than the second quarter 2019. What we did think was kind of interesting was a couple of different things. That the importance of ongoing automatic contributions was very evident, and that the percentage of gross sales from the automatic contribution increased because the number of new and one-time contributions decreased overall. What we didn't notice was that within the advisor sold channel, that there was some indication of a very much more steady level of gross sales, and even for in certain cases an increase. And by and large, we count that for advisors actively taking advantage of the market decrease, that hey, the market is on discount of say 20-30%, and then in a 15-year run for my clients' children, we think that the market will increase. Yes, there was a lot of active management, a lot of active contributions, and it does show the value of the financial advisor to perhaps jump in when the markets are volatile and take advantage of those price decreases. Which definitely shows the value of the financial advisor within the planning process. It is interesting. We'll be tracking the overall industry, the new accounts, and by distribution distribution channel as well, to really see what the storyboards are. Another question that keeps coming up is also the gross distributions. Is it taking place? Is there a noticeable like volume of outflows? And as I just said, gross distributions had decreased. And one reason that we think that took place was that within the CARES Act, that the 10% penalty from 401k accounts was basically removed. So were there to be a liquidity need for families, that it was by and large a lot easier to take the distribution from the retirement accounts as opposed to education. Now, as we stand, if were there to be a continued long-term downtrend, at the macro level, at the main street, and once those retirement assets, if the retirement assets, get to zero, that we could see then at that point there to be finally some gross distributions taking place from 529 plans and education savings accounts. But currently, as of the second quarter, we don't see that emergency liquidity taking place from 529s as much as perhaps in that retirement bucket. More to come. We'll be following very closely, and once the data is released, we'll be sharing the high level amongst on the webinars, but obviously detailed information with our data and research clients. And as a quick note, in terms of where my focus is, we're looking at the data and research for the second quarter. We're focusing on the 529 conference. And then from there, through the end of the year, our focus will pivot over to the 529 distribution analysis, where every year we do an annual survey of advisors to really look at what's working for them. What do they need more for? What do they, where are the gaps from that product marketing, distribution, and legislative perspective? It's a dedicated, survey of advisors on 529s and college financial planning. That's why we do it every year. Keep the pulse to update, and the list of sections are below. Inquire below, but also if you have ideas on what we should be looking at, and just let us know, because the first step is typically talking with the industry to see what is of interest and what we should be including in the survey, which ends up landing within the study. So more to come, and please contact us. So finally, diving into this month's section, we're taking a look at the employer channel, and we're going to talk about why, what, and how, because a lot of the different people and views within the industry think that the employer channel is one way or another way. So we want to talk about all the different perspectives on this topic, and then lo and behold, how to find key elements and details from proprietary surveys. And first, able first, because it is a fairly new product, the storyboard is shorter, so we want to start out with Able. So the market data, currently 1% of gross sales, or $2 billion in 2019, came in through that employer channel. Within the employer channel for Able, one of the larger topics of discussion relates to Able to Work, which provides incremental opportunities to save more for those that are looking to do incremental ways to earn income. So typically there's a $15,000 by and large annual contribution limit for Able accounts, and people can contribute more into that account up to the federal poverty line or the individual's compensation for the year. It was signed into law in 2018, effective signed into law 2017, began effective 2018, and currently is set to sunset in 2022, if not extended. So there's a lot of focus around tracking the success of that plan to date, but also looking for arguments to extend that piece as well. So more to come on that Able side. And for the 529 employer channel perspectives, thinking about this conversation and think about all the different perspectives throughout this discussion. When we take a look at the employee perspective, there's just a fairly sizable argument for automating progress towards goals. And as a quick side note, there's a lot of talk about data stacks, but also content stacks as well. It's a quick side note. As I think about the topic, there's the book Discipline Equals Freedom, just having the discipline to do the hard things that are needed. The Automatic Millionaire, having the discipline to make automatic contributions, and just how if you don't see the money in your bank account, for example, that one is much more apt to save. And so it's just making the automatic contributions from one's paycheck to the financial goals creates a long-term asset growth. So as one quick paradigm or thinking, discipline equals freedom, having the discipline to make this automatic contributions, automatic millionaire, into investment, asset building accounts. So that is one content stack for the day. But when we think about saving for those goals, there's the goal for the child and child or grandchild, basically trying to save towards that educational goal. There's also the conversation about saving for oneself, whether it be if someone wants to change careers or accelerate skill sets within the one's own career, or perhaps you have a spouse that wants to go back to school. Obviously, given the an unemployment rate above 10%, there's a number of use cases to set aside 1 or 5% of one's income for their child, or if one needs or wants to use one for their own career. It's an argument that I had mentioned to CNBC that they covered within their article, and it's something to think about as well, because a lot of the 529 plans, they think about, the industry in general, they think about a parent saving for their child or grandparents saving for the child, but there's also been that long-term use of people being able to save for their own career as well. From the firm's perspective, the company's perspective, the employer's perspective, they are looking at this from an attraction or retention tool. If one were to offer great college financial planning benefits, or broadly speaking, great benefits, that they're able to attract key employees and also retain them as well. So that is one way that they are looking at it. From the advisor perspective, and I have a picture from the 529 conference 2016. That's in the middle of the great lineup. That's Ross Camarada of UBS, and he had a lot of great conversations and pointers to me. And he basically said, I love 529s in college financial planning because I get to go in, talk to employees. That's one of their most pressing, much more pressing needs for them, as opposed to retirement, which seems decades away. Where this is typically a lot more of a pressing need. He gets to get into the kitchen door conversations with the clients, and then get to pivot over to the broader conversations of retirement and things otherwise. So, by and large, a lot of advisors do like the 529 employer conversation because it does provide them with opportunities to engage, but also provide those client meetings one-on-one, but also educational seminars as well. On the product side, a lot of the 529 product providers like just the scale of the conversation, having one conversation, one agreement lead to multiple 529 accounts, and helping a lot more people, as opposed to doing a lot of blocking and tackling to individual investors. And that's one way in which the 529 product providers have been seeing the conversations. Within government, there's actually two levels of the conversation. There's the state level and there's the federal level. And just thinking about Jay Powell's conversation yesterday. And one thing that I did notice is that doing our monthly webinar at the end of the month, seems like a lot of our conversations are 1 or 2 days after Jay Powell's conversation on the much broader U.S. economy. And he used the term retool, reskill, upskill, improving education or skill sets to increase technology, productivity, all these different things that basically is perfectly suited for 529 college savings plans. Were there to be more people saving and saving efficiently for education, whether it be for their children or the self, that would be able to help the U.S. economy retool, get back to work and get back on track, broadly speaking. So it's an interesting parallel. And a lot of at the state level, there's a lot of the state conversations as well, trying to make sure that the economy is growing within their states, within their state lines, and to really accelerate the overall workforce, economy, and prosperity of things going on within the state. So there's a lot of state and local conversations as well. It's a much, when one looks at the conversations from this perspective, it's a much more broader conversation than, say, like 529 employer is just the employer conversation alone. There's so many different facets, to this conversation. On the product side, there's also, of course, I did have a strong emphasis on the power of automatic contributions and the ability to, set aside automatic contributions in terms of not just, attaining, goal-based investing and creating wealth, but also there's so many different more aspects as well. There's the state tax incentives topic. We're going to have a deeper dive into the state tax incentive conversation next slide, but beyond just what one would even think about for the 529 employer channel, there's also a lot of state tax incentives that go to employers who are willing to help employees have this conversation. There's the federal legislative momentum. The CARES Act actually had some broader conversations on the loan side of the conversation, while we're focusing a lot more on the saving and paying side. But that being said, it's great to see that the CARES Act, did have federal legislation as it relates to the, college financial planning employer benefits. So it's great to see that there's, federal legislative momentum as well, which accelerates and increases the prioritization of the 529 and college financial planning conversation overall. There's also a lot of plans with dedicated share classes, for the employer channel. It's great to see that there is within the product structure itself, that there is plans with dedicated share classes for the employer channel. So that in and of itself shows that there is an emphasis and importance set to the employer channel as well. One bullet point, which probably could arguably be first, is the number and volume of dedicated personnel within this specific channel. There's as I was looking at the attendees attendee list, there's a lot of people who are who are dedicated to the 529 employer channel. Even just to even mention, College Invest has several dedicated people for the 529 employer channel. I assume they're on today's call. Let's see if they start mentioning in the Q&A. But also Jorn Oat of the Hartford as well. Definitely pounding the pavement in West Virginia for the 529 employer channel. So there are a number of dedicated people that are focusing on this. Flipping to a very similar conversation, there's a number of dedicated educational seminars that do take place, whether it be seminars for educational seminars at, for employees, for a dedicated employer. So there's a lot of dedicated seminars going on for this channel. There's also a number of 529 plans with marketing collateral dedicated for this specific channel to have those conversations, to whether it be to for employee or an employer, to to have that conversation, or to the advisor who's helping the employer to set up this type of 529 plan for the employees. And also, there's also a lot of different conversations around the platform functionality. There's a lot of improvements within the last 12 months around the platform functionality, just making the conversation easier to have. So that lo and behold, the conversation goes way beyond, hey, it's just a automatic contribution. It's a non-issue, but it is a fairly substantial topic that hits on state tax incentives, the legislation, dedicated share classes, dedicated personnel for this important topic, specific educational seminars, marketing collateral that is focused on this, and also the platform functionality. So it's a much broader conversation than one could even imagine, as I'm learning as well. And as I mentioned on this slide, there's the state tax employer incentive. There's 8 states currently offering incentives. Idaho's the newest one, and I believe they are on today's webinar as well. But this is just one example that within Idaho, it allows Idaho employers to receive up to 20% tax credit for contributions to their employees' ideal account, up to $500 per employee annually. There's 7 additional states, and it's great news, and congrats Colorado for extending the employer 529 tax incentives for 10 more years. If I had a little bit more time, I'm making webinars. I probably would have had a dedicated slide for each and every one of these states. But lo and behold, congrats and kudos to these states that are making it a priority for their residents and employers. And when we look at the market data, approximately 1.7% of gross sales in the first quarter were from the employer contributions, 167 million in the first quarter 2020 alone. And when we look at a topic, typically when we try to analyze a topic, we look at the market data, we look at parent surveys, employer surveys, advisor surveys. So how do we look at the entire industry from all these different perspectives? Because a lot of the issues can be resolved when someone takes a look at an issue from all these different perspectives. But from the parent perspective, 73% enrolling through the employer reported under 100,000 in household income. We'll talk about that more in an upcoming slide as well, because I think a lot of the reluctance at the federal and state level, really kind of points to like, oh, we don't want to provide employer incentives because it's really just the high net worth. And really, in reality, the opposite is just that. So we'll talk more about this topic on the net worth side on upcoming. But yeah, when we take a look at the parent survey, there's also it's the number 1 pivot for for non-savers to actually become a 529 user. So taking someone who's just not saving at all for college and to pivot them all the way to become a 529 user, offering that 529 employer contribution match is the number 1 driver. Number 2 is, even if there wasn't a match, that is the number 2 pivot point for getting someone to be a 529 user. What's intriguing is that the number 1 pushback I hear, or some people hear, is like, oh, why would you even offer it? Because there's an employer match. Well, that bullet point right there says exactly why. So one more. In terms of current market sizing, 8.1% of employers offer 529s to their employees as a benefit. And from that advisor perspective, there's by and large, a lot of the advisors, they do work with retail, they do work with institutions. They want to find ways to work with institutions more, and 39% are reporting that they want to do more, learn more about this topic. And this is a follow-on to the income slide on the last slide, to the net worth slide. And really what this shows is that in our annual survey of parents, it shows, basically like, how people enrolled, whether it be employer, direct through the advisor, or the advisor saying like, hey, just, sign up for the 529 plan on your own within all those different categories. And what when we look at just the slice of those with a net worth of under 150,000, there is 27% of those within that category, basically enrolled through the employer channel, versus like a lower percentage direct, and even a lower percentage, within with a financial advisor. So lo and behold, those that are enrolling through an employer, it's such an important, critical channel that do help all folks. And so this is obviously a myth buster, because the myth is that the employer channel has the highest net worth category, where in reality it's actually that has a much more higher concentration of 529 users with net worth of under 150,000. And when we look at the proprietary survey of parents, parents using 529s, like how can things improve, and then what do you need more of to make you happier? Because as we had mentioned before, we asked a lot of the questions around like what's working, what's not working, what do you need more, and lo and behold, what they want is more employee open enrollment meetings. So to the extent that that we get more and more dedicated people having dedicated conversations and open enrollment meetings on this topic, it's the number one need in terms of what people want, in terms of just there being, accelerating the usage and success of the 529 employer channel. The second is the, payroll deduction options. That's actually been a decreasing, percentage over the years, which makes me think that the platforms are getting better. The payroll deduction options are, becoming much more efficient. I know that for even within my own experience and fellow like employees, that broadly speaking, and based on feedback, is that a lot of the operations of setting up payroll deductions are getting easier, a lot more being done online versus like paper. And obviously, given the realities of today, where most people are not physically going into offices nowadays, that the importance of getting those, reducing that paperwork only has become more and more important. There's the education materials, so obviously marketing departments, and then the platform integrations between the retirement plans and the 529 plans just make it much more integrated. Also, a lot of the commentary, discusses like having it be on one screen, just easier to use, sort of like not exactly, but a mint.com, but perhaps something that makes it, a lot easier. You log in, you see your 529 account, you see your 401k account, just making it much more integrated from a functionality perspective. And that kind of goes into that online capabilities discussion. So a number of items here, obviously, platform marketing, but also, distribution and just sort of like, community facing resources in need. So there's, great opportunity, great success to date, and there's opportunities for enhancements. And then we flip that conversation over to the advisor channel, ask a lot of the same questions. What's interesting is that there's certain differences, there's certain commonalities, but also certain differences. Payroll deduction options is a much higher percentage. Reducing that paperwork burden is much more of an advisor focus. It makes one think that reducing the paperwork burden is much more of an advisor facing topic and issue than an end user hurdle. So, lo and behold, there's a couple different strategies, and depending on how one wants to strategize how to accelerate within the 529 employer channel, there's a couple different strategies depending on if one is looking at more of a direct to employee versus an advisor conversation. But what's interesting on this one is that the number 5 bullet point is open enrollment meeting support. So perhaps there is the advisor that has a relationship with the employer, and the employees, that perhaps the 529 product providers can provide folks to come in, help with the open enrollment meeting support. Again, College Invest has a team of folks that go throughout the state and have those conversations. So kudos to that team, but also the Hartford as well, and a number of other firms as well. So I would suggest that someone take a quick look at how things differ. Obviously, open enrollment meetings, number 1 for the parents, number 5 for the advisors, the paperwork issue being a much more front and center here versus the parent conversation on the prior slide. So a lot to think about. But on a recap, there's a lot of great industry announcements happening this month, data and research updates, the employer channel. So the date for the next date is August 27th, 2020. We also have announced the schedule throughout 2020. So some great news with Paul Curley. Thank you, Johnny Jaczynski, for helping me build out that title and theme over there. So with that, we'll go over to the disclosure. Thank you very much. I'll drop off the camera and then we'll take some questions. Thank you.
We'll now take some time for Q&A. And if you haven't submitted your question yet, invite you to please find the Q&A section on the right side of your webinar screen. And please feel free to submit any questions to Paul here, or you're also welcome to follow up with him via email. So Paul, just maybe you can provide hold on just a second, sorry. Question that came through, are there any ideas on how to engage with employers during these times that we're going through right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's the strategy of engage, having the calls with the employers, making sure that there's marketing material to have the conversation, but also being open and willing to have the open enrollment meetings. I've never seen, I've rarely seen, I should say, there being too much conversations with 529s and college financial planning, whether it be advisors or employers, and to the extent that there's just so much need, and it's better to engage than to keep the head down and keep plugging along. So it's a great time to stand out. It's a great time to get one's reps in, and keep blocking and tackling.
Thanks, Paul. We have a couple other questions coming through, so I will go through these. Most advisor sold plans are challenged when trying to pitch 529 as an employee benefit, given that each individual has to designate an advisor on their plan. How can they get over this hurdle?
Yeah, that's a great question, and happy to have a conversation after the webinar. But yeah, I mean, lo and behold, there's a number of 529 plans providing the additional operations and functionality to really make sure that the advisor is having the conversation with the employee. Just kind of comes along with the know your client questions that do come up, that do crop up. And there was, within the advisor survey, didn't make the top 5 as a hurdle, but was there in terms of there being some advisors just having an issue to how does one know the client. But that there are some 529 plans that have functionality that really really requires the advisor to sign off to say yes, I have had a conversation and touch base with the client, and in order to move forward. So it's an operational item that is being improved over time, and congrats and kudos to those plans that are making the process easier for everyone.
Thanks, Paul. You mentioned in one of your slides that 8% of employers are currently offering payroll deduction plans. Do you see that this number is increasing, decreasing, or remaining stagnant?
Great question, Joseph. And based on your great work at your firms and over the years, that percentage is increasing. But yeah, I mean, in all focused answer in seriousness, yeah, that percentage has been increasing and growing just broadly because there's been more and more of a focus on that wellness factor. Even before the market volatility, there's been more of a focus, and obviously there's the conversation around the CARES Act and PLRs with Abbott Labs that are really making college financial a larger and larger topic. But also as one pivots over and discusses with just that student loan issue becoming a more and more pressing issue, so that if that as the more and more employers are looking to attract and retain clients, that percentage is increasing, and we expect that to continue to increase as the operations become easier, the marketing becomes easier, and as we have more and more focus on that topic. So great question, Joe, and look forward to catching up soon.
Thanks, Paul. Are there other states beyond the 8 existing ones that are looking to adopt employer tax incentives for 529 contributions?
Thank you, Connor, for the question. Yeah, there are a number of states that are looking to evaluate that exact number. Even before the market volatility, there's been a number of states evaluating to accelerate that item even further, and just building that the number of states over, like the number of states offering having increased over time. We see that trend continuing, and given the increased focus on the retooling, and importance of retooling both at the state and the federal level, that there's a number of states that are having more and more conversations to include those state tax incentives. So great question, Connor. Thank you.
Thanks, that's great. We still have some more questions coming in, so let me try to get through all of these while we have a little bit of time. Do you have any suggestions of what person in the organization is the best entry into a corporation?
Yeah, I mean, we haven't researched this one specifically, but based on conversations on where it has been successful in the past, there's broadly speaking a couple different categories, whether that be the HR department of the plan sponsors that are really overseeing and just kind of helping to rejigger those benefits packages. There's also been a lot of conversations around the C-suite of helping the CEO set up their own 529 plan, and then having working to have that be an employee benefit as well across the firm. So sort of like finding that champion. But also, frankly, there's also been a lot of different stories about just having that be an employer who really feels strong about the topic. I know that we have set one up within our own firm, and so sometimes it just takes a champion to really just take the reins and to make it happen, to make that conversation happen. So there's a number of entry points, and we're happy to review that more and share insight as we get it. So thank you.
Thanks, Paul. Do you have any insights on the potential to make 529 a tax advantage plan at the federal level and offer a tax deduction?
Yeah, I mean, we've been within, say, College Savings Foundation, CSF, and CSBN, College Savings Plan Network, and we've been trying to make that as one of the higher priorities to help make that happen, to have the conversations. And obviously there's such a great window of opportunity with so much conversations. Obviously, when Jay Powell just talks about that topic of retooling, retraining, getting people back up to speed and accelerating that need. I just think the conversation is there. I don't think I think there's more opportunity to make that happen, but in the short, immediate term, we probably had the best chance yet to have it as a conversation point on the table, but we're not there yet. We'll continue to fight, and great question, Diego. Thank you.
Well, thanks, Paul, and thank you everyone for your questions. I think we're running out of time here, but we appreciate all the interaction, and for any questions we did not get to, or if you have additional ones, we will follow up after this webinar. And please invite you to reach out to Paul. Please expect a follow-up email that will follow after this with a link to the webinar recording and contact information if you'd like to review any of the information that was covered. But thank you all, and have a wonderful rest of your day. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Mary.